Welcome to the Cubbie Corner here on SouthBendCubs.com alongside Darin Pritchett. I'm Brendan King. We're in the middle of spring training. The Chicago Cubs are down in Mesa, Arizona. And Darin, 30 games left to go in spring training. And we're going to get set for a big 162-game schedule for the Chicago Cubs. But getting set, their first series is going to be against Miami. It's a 4-game set down in Florida. And, based off what Miami has done this offseason, the Cubs also have 12 out of their first 20 against the NL Central. They might have a really good opportunity to get out of the gates really well.
Great opportunity to put pressure on a couple of teams in the division that you feel like have gotten better, but have they gotten better enough to compete with the Cubs? And that's Milwaukee and St. Louis. It sure seems like Milwaukee needs one more starting pitching. The Cardinals' offense looks good, but there's still some questions with their pitching staff, and there's no doubt getting off to that start with Miami in the first 4, you got a chance to win 4 games against basically a AAA team nowadays. And if you get off to that early lead in the NL Central, puts a lot of pressure on those teams to have to chase this outstanding Cubs squad.
But for now in spring training, 30 games to go, a chance to get better. That's what Joe Maddon's preaching every day. What do the Chicago Cubs have to do to focus on to get ready for the season?
I think the good thing for them, after winning the title last year, it felt like that maybe they were not as focused early on as they should have been, but they caught fire in the second half and they looked like a world championship contender at that point. It almost feels like not being the champion now. They're going back to basics. They're working on the little things. There's a new attitude, the #EverybodyIn model that's already been established. So I think now putting that world championship behind them, there's going to be a lot of extra hunger with this team.
And maybe teams aren't focusing on them as much as maybe the Yankees now and the Red Sox after the big J.D. Martinez signing. And, we'll see where the other guys fall. Where's Arrieta going to go? Where Moustakas is he going to go? I mean, maybe the Cubs won't have to be in the limelight this year.
I just wonder, with the Dodgers and the Nationals being kind of the other contenders, have they really gotten that much better? The Dodgers lost Darvish. He's now on the Cubs. And it doesn't feel like Washington has done anything too significant. Bryce Harper in his final year there probably before he becomes a free agent. So there's a lot of pressure in Washington to win this year. I think there's actually more pressure on Washington than the Cubs this year.
Now to move on to the Cubs themselves, the infield is pretty solidified. I mean, it's going to be that same infield, Bryant, Russell, Baez, Rizzo for a long time. Is more pressure now on the outfield just because Hayward really needs to prove himself? We'll see what Schwarber does now that he lost all the weight. Is the pressure on the outfield this year?
It sure seems like it's weird to say it's maybe the weakness of the team, but Hayward, after 2 mediocre offensive years, he has something to prove. Now he's still that great defensive player, a plus defensive player, obviously in right field. Happ and Almora will be interesting in the outfield. Almora just creams left-handed pitching. If he could become a little more of a balanced player, maybe he gets a few more at-bats. I think Schwarber's interesting. The 2 stolen bases in a game already in the spring, a guy that can hit 35 home runs. You wonder at this point, is he ever going to hit for average? But in today's baseball, it's all about on-base percentage. And the fact that he hit around 215 with a 315 on base, that's actually pretty good on base when you consider that batting average.
A lot of people forget that he hit 30 home runs last year just because the batting average overshadowed that.
And he was in the minors for a while.
Yeah, and I don't think that's something a lot of people are going to remember now that he's a completely new person. Those highlights are ridiculous of that weight loss. Man, oh man. Moving now to the Cubs 40-man roster, there are now 3 former South Bend Cubs on the Cubs 40-man, and Ian Happ, Dylan Maples, and David Bote. Now, you had a chance to call games for all 3 of them. Let's start with Bote because he's more of a new name on the scene. What stands out to you about David Bote?
What's interesting about David is in 2014, when the Cubs were still in Kane County, he was a member of that squad that just dominated the Midwest League. He came to South Bend in 2015 as a member of the team, and he was basically a utility player. He was not given everyday at-bats in the first half, but he continued to hit, and he pushed his way into the starting lineup. Jimmy Gonzalez had to start playing him every day, and he had a tremendous second half. I remember a grand slam he hit in Dayton. He continued to hit at Myrtle Beach. He's hit at AA. So all of a sudden, Bote has put himself on the map. I know MLB Pipeline has him the 15th best prospect in the Cubs system. He's a handy guy because he can play a lot of positions. He's a right-handed bat, and the power continues to come. He has forced his way into being a prospect in this organization.
But he has been everywhere that you could be in the Cubs organization, whether that's the old affiliates, like you said, Kane County and Boise. He's been all over the place in the Cubs organization. Really great to see that. He's going to get an opportunity, especially to start in AAA, but now he's on the 40-man. You just never know.
If there's an injury, he's a guy that can play many infield spots. I think he can play first, second, short, third. He can hand you some pretty good innings in the outfield as well. So one of those guys that plays a lot of positions, and you know Joe Madden loves that.
Now moving to Dylan Maples, another guy that you got to call. He's been everywhere as well after being drafted out of high school. He's only 25, though, still. Dylan Maples, what does he have to do to continually improve?
It's interesting because when he was here, he did not have great control. I mean, he lit up the clocks. I mean, he was throwing 98, 99. The breaking ball was very inconsistent. He's become more consistent in that area. He's been more of a strike thrower. And now all of a sudden, he got that chance with the Chicago Cubs late last year. He's got the power arm, which they love. And I just wonder if there's maybe an injury or something early on in the first half of the season, if he might be one of the first guys called up.
Maples did struggle in 5 innings. He allowed about 6 runs. So he did struggle at times. But you know what? That's a big responsibility to go up to a team that is pushing for the playoffs at that time and, you know, trying to – they weren't a favorite by any means at that point. So he did have to come in and pitch well.
You know, a couple of years ago, you wondered if he was ever going to make it any farther, and he's figured things out. He's got a little better control. So honestly, remembering him in 2015 and I believe 2016, I wouldn't have guessed he would have been pitching with the Chicago Cubs last year. That's how far he's come.
Wow. And now moving to Ian Happ, a guy that could be at the top of the order this year. Yeah. Had a very good rookie season, top 10 in Rookie of the Year voting. What are you looking for Ian Happ this year?
Well, he's got that ability to switch hit, which is huge for Joe Madden. He can play center. I honestly prefer him in the corner spots, but he started to show he can play center field. He was mainly a left fielder and a right fielder with South Bend in 2015. You know, he's adequate at second base. If you need that extra bat in the lineup, he can play there. And he just has great – I just feel like he's a guy that handles the strike zone so well. He's going to draw walks. He's going to have that high on-base percentage. In today's baseball, you live with the strikeouts, but he's going to provide you power, maybe that 20 to 30 home run guy, pretty consistently throughout his career.
Now, you hinted at it when you were talking about Dylan Maples in the Cubs' top prospects, and Bote's there at number 15, but now it came out in the Cubs' top 30, 21 of them are now pitchers. That is something that we haven't seen for the Chicago Cubs in a long time just because of the string of hitters that continue to come together. What does that show you now that there are 21 pitchers in the top 30?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind for me, the last 2 years in the draft, they have just went so heavy on pitching that they haven't drafted many position players. So I almost feel like it's a result of the way they've drafted the last couple of years. But I think they're going to become a bigger player in the international market with position players here coming up. So that may level up, but there really is that need to find some pitching in the organization. What was the stat? Since 2012, there have been 80 innings pitched by Chicago Cub minor league pitchers, which is pretty remarkable in today's baseball. They're basically getting their pitching from free agency, and you know what? It's worked out just fine, and trades as well, but they would love to be able to supplement their pitching rotation and their bullpen with some of their guys they've drafted and developed.
And that can work out for us here in South Bend as well. You hinted at in the last Cubbie Corner, we could see a really good pitching staff here in South Bend that is led by Alex Lang and Corey Abbott, the first 2 draft picks in 2017. Corey actually pitched for my Cape League team back in 2016 through a perfect game at Loyola Marymount his senior year. And Alex Lang was the big power arm of the SEC at LSU. So possibly, like you said, a very good pitching rotation on the way here.
And we'll just throw one more name out there, 19-year-old Jose Albertos, who has a tremendous arm. I remember talking to Brian Lawrence, the South Bend Cubs pitching coach last year and this year about him. Electric stuff. This will be his first opportunity to pitch full season. So we'll get a really good indication of what he has to offer. But from what we understand, he has a tremendous arm, and he's showing up on those prospect lists.
You know what, Darin? I called 3 of his starts last year in Boise when he was with Eugene, and the fastball, his fastball when he was first signed, they were hinting at it being 98, 99, but he had an elbow problem. It's now at 94, 95. But, man, that out pitch of the changeup, it got a lot of Boise hitters out. So I'm looking forward to seeing that if he is here in South Bend for quite a while. So it should be a lot of fun. 30 more games in spring training. It's going to go by quick.
It sure will. And there's a couple of spots up for grabs on that Cubs roster, but you just take a look at the starting lineup. It looks so impressive, and it's going to be hard to imagine anybody in the NL Central will be able to catch them with the way the rosters are constructed right now.
Well, thank you all for tuning in to this week's Cubbie Corner. For Darin Pritchett, I'm Brendan King. Have a good day.